I'm going to make this very simple for you, Dan. Men should not play sports against women. I'm not going to get into all the bullshit that's going on out here in the world today. If anybody thinks that, I think they're stupid. I'm not, like I say, I support the gay community 100%. I support the transgender community 100%. But I do not, under any circumstances, under zero, think that men should play sports against women. And if anybody have a problem with that, they're going to have to get over it, because I'm not going to change. I just think it's wrong, period.
Which are what? The science behind this, that men and women are different. And you can call yourself a woman, you can call yourself a cat, call yourself whatever you want, but the facts are what? Trans women are men. And the W in WNBA stands for women.
Before the game, you had a conversation with Sophie Cunningham.
I did.
If you want to share what you talked about, feel free. But more of my question is just how important is it to have those like in-person conversations with people that
I think it's
have
great.
different views?
I think it's great. I think both of us understand that we have platforms, and we both talked about wanting to, more than anything, educate. And there are some things that.
Charles Barkley just said the one thing most people in sports media have been too nervous to say out loud, and he said it without blinking. Sitting on Inside the NBA, Barkley made it clear he agrees with Sophie Cunningham's position that men shouldn't be competing in women's sports, and he said it in that same blunt, no-nonsense tone he's used his whole career whenever he thinks something obvious is being made complicated on purpose.
But I'm never going to think it's all right for men to play sports against women. I don't even think that's controversial. That's the thing that's funny. Like some of this stuff make, like when you see these debates on television, I'm like, yeah, men shouldn't play sports against women. I'm done. I don't want to hear you try to explain it to me. No, I don't want to hear it. I'm not going to argue with you. Men shouldn't play sports against women. I'm done. There's a lot of we can argue over. That ain't one.
Rewind to where this actually started. Sophie sat down for an interview and said, plainly, that she wants to protect young girls and women in sports, and that she believes competition should stay separated by biological sex. No name calling, no targeting of any specific player, just a policy opinion given in response to a direct question. That single answer is what set off weeks of national coverage. And it's the same sentence Barkley was reacting to when he spoke up.
You don't see trans men going and saying, I want to play football. I want to play basketball. I want to be. Why there's no trans men going into men's spaces? Why is it trans women that's going into women's spaces? Show me the last time a trans man was on a podium in any sport. Show me the last time a trans man won in cycling, cross country, football, they played on the team, volleyball team, track and field, 4x100 meter relay on track and field, steeplechase, name it. Show me a trans man that have been competitive. Show me one. Show me one.
What's happening to Sophie since that interview has gone way past disagreement? She's getting booed every time she touches the ball on the road. Arenas have had banners aimed directly at her, and the WNBA has been slow, almost reluctant to step in and say, enough is enough. It started to look less like fans expressing frustration and more like an organized effort to make an example out of one player for saying something a lot of people privately agree with.
Why the fuck are y'all booing Sophie Cunningham at every game now, man? This is what we doing to Sophie, trying to villainize this woman when all she did was what, stand up?
The booing out of Portland says everything. Every time Sophie caught the ball, the crowd erupted into boos loud enough that broadcast mics picked it up clearly. She didn't flinch. She answered it the way competitors usually do, by hitting a shot right back at the people jeering her and letting the scoreboard do the talking instead of a press conference.
All of the crazies out there are now protesting her at WNBA games. So much so that a coach from another team pulled Sophie aside to have a few words with her and just let her know what she had thought about what Sophie said. Guys, Sophie Cunningham is probably the most popular athlete in the WNBA. If she goes bye-bye, there is no more WNBA. Additionally, have you ever seen Sophie Cunningham play ball before? What on earth makes y'all think that she cares about a bunch of crybabies complaining about an 80-20 issue? Literally, no one wants men and women's sports. It is highly unpopular, and the only people that do want that are people who have likely never played sports before in their lives.
But the boos are only half the story. Banners have shown up at road games with messages clearly meant to shame her for the ESPN comments. And arena security has had to get involved more than once when things escalated between fans holding opposing signs. It's rare for a WNBA game to generate this much crowd tension over something that happened off the court entirely. And that alone tells you how far this has traveled beyond basketball.
Super respectful. We were just holding our signs and cheering for both teams. And this lady, older lady, comes up to us, and she comes up to us, and at first I think she's gonna be nice, and then she asks like, "What are you guys doing?" or something like that. And then it was like, "Jesus loves everyone." That's what she told us, and I was like, "Oh, I know. Like, I'm religious. Like, I know. Like, I know." Nice. Yeah, and she's like, "Oh, I hope Jesus can forgive you for what sin you've done," and like something like that. And then she told us that we were effing insane, and she's like, and she went like insane. Yeah. She's like, "You better stop this and stop pulling this." Yeah. And for you guys, I hope God can save you. Yeah.
She said, "For you to come here and pull this shit." Yeah. She said the word. Yeah. Did she say effing insane or?
No, she said the word.
And nobody around you spoke up for you. No. I will say, Annalie, when I came over, you were in tears.
Yeah, I've never been yelled at like that. I mean, I've had people hate on me on the internet, but like it doesn't really affect me as much because it's just people online.
Then came the moment that really blew this open. A Seattle Storm co-owner, Celeste Keaton, confronted two teenage fans sitting courtside over a sign that read nothing more than a thank you to Sophie for speaking up for girls in sports. No hostility on that sign, no attack on any player, just gratitude. Keaton told the girls their presence was insane and suggested they needed forgiveness, and one of them was in tears before the night ended. The league eventually fined and suspended Keaton, but only after days of public pressure once the video spread. That's the backdrop Barkley was speaking into when he finally addressed the situation on air. He wasn't just weighing in on a policy debate in the abstract. He was reacting to a controversy that already had real victims. Two kids who came to a game to support a player they admire and left shaken because an adult with power decided their sign was worth confronting.
Sophie Cunningham has said that males, biological males, do not belong in women's sport. That's it. That is the rational, sane, commonly shared stance. It's a safety issue. It's a fairness issue. It's not an anti-trans kids campaign, but this coach saying, "Oh, trans kids are well." This is what they do. The straw man argument. She is trying to say that Sophie is against trans kids and she's excluding them and this is evil. No! It's so dumb. It's so evil. It's so calculated. And this is how they silence people.
Barkley didn't stop at simply agreeing with Sophie. He went further and warned the league directly, saying something close to, "Y'all got to be very careful how you handle this," pointing out that trying to punish a player for stating an honest opinion sets a dangerous precedent for everyone involved, players, coaches, and the league office alike. That's a heavier statement than it sounds. Coming from someone with Barkley's platform and history of speaking his mind, regardless of who it upsets. What made this moment bigger than just one segment is that Barkley wasn't the only established voice in sports willing to say it out loud. Once his comments started circulating, other figures from completely different corners of the sports world began adding their own take. And almost none of them landed anywhere close to the WNBA's official posture on the controversy.
So she just says what's true. She says common sense thing, and she gets so much backlash. She's like, men should not be playing in women's sports. Why is that so, I don't get it. I don't understand it. It's a simple statement. She stood by it. That's what I love about when people say things. Don't back down. If you say something, stand by it. And she said it. She backed it up. She's not backing down no matter how much heat she gets from certain people. It's an 80-20 issue. 80% of the country think it's true, 20% don't. The 20% is crushing her. Let them. Who cares? But I love that she didn't back down. I love everything she stands for. She plays hard. She's good. And like I said, I don't watch WNBA, but I like those two girls right there. Yeah, she's going to get backlash from the girls around her and other teams. And, it's it's a liberal and mostly gay league, which is fine. I have no problem. My daughter is gay. No problem. I got no problem with that. I got no problem with that. But the way they push things on people, sometimes I don't like it in the WNBA. That's why I'm not a big fan of watching their games and supporting it.
Former Chicago Bears linebacker Brian Urlacher was one of the first football voices to jump in, saying flatly that he didn't understand why an honest opinion about competitive fairness was being treated like a scandal. Kendrick Perkins, the former NBA center turned ESPN analyst, took a more measured tone but landed in a similar place, saying players should be allowed to answer questions honestly without having their season turned into a referendum on their character. Shaquille O'Neal, never one to stay quiet for long, chimed in on his own show, suggesting the entire situation had been blown out of proportion by people looking for something to be outraged about. It wasn't just retired athletes either. Current broadcasters and former Olympians started weighing in too, which is part of what made this moment different from a typical sports talk radio dust-up. Sage Steele, who has been outspoken on issues around fairness in women's sports before, publicly backed the 2 teenage girls who got confronted by Keaton, saying their treatment reflected poorly on the entire Storm organization, regardless of where anyone stood on the underlying debate.
We're trying to almost weaponize the word kid and children to, dig deep on the feelings of people instead of the facts, which are what? The science behind this, that men and women are different. And you can call yourself a woman, you can call yourself a cat, call yourself whatever you want, but the facts are what? Trans women are men. And the W in WNBA stands for women. So I just hate it when words like that are weaponized. And Sophie Cunningham made it very, very clear from day one, when, by the way, she didn't bring this up. She was asked by an ESPN reporter about this topic, and she answered. And then as the controversy brewed, she went on Twitter and said the same thing, which is, I am not trying to exclude anyone. Everybody is welcome at my table, but this is the WNBA.
Steele's comments mattered because she wasn't coming at this from inside the NBA world the way Barkley was. She approached it from a broadcaster's perspective, someone who has spent years covering sports controversies and knows the difference between a player expressing an opinion and a player attacking someone. Her read was that Sophie never crossed that line and that the reaction to her comments said more about the current climate than it did about anything she actually said. Other voices started stacking up quickly after that. Retired swimmer and outspoken advocate for women's sports fairness, Riley Gaines, publicly thanked Barkley for using his platform to say what she'd been arguing for years, though she came at it from an activist's lane rather than a sports commentary one. Golf analysts and even a couple of retired MLB players added brief comments on their own social accounts, mostly variations of the same idea that an athlete answering a direct question honestly shouldn't turn into a campaign against her.
Do you think Sophie Cunningham's comments were anti-trans?
No, not even a little. Dan, she went out of her way to say, I love everyone. This is about science and fairness and protecting women. Because guess what? Until recently, women, we had our own sets of grievances. We couldn't vote. It wasn't that long ago. You really put it in the context of the history of the world. Women couldn't vote. We couldn't get, checking accounts without the husband's signature. All these things women fought for. Women to be able to be in the workplace. All of these things. Now that we've gotten those things and we've evened the playing field, somehow there's this other level of grievance come. It's always about grievance. And this is protecting what we've earned, not about hating on anybody else.
Perkins went into more detail during a First Take segment, explaining that he's covered plenty of athletes who said controversial things over the years. And what stood out to him about Sophie's situation was how calm and consistent she'd stayed throughout, never escalating, never name-calling, even while the backlash against her kept intensifying. He pointed out that plenty of NBA players have said far more inflammatory things about far more sensitive topics and never faced anything close to the same organized backlash Sophie has dealt with. Not everyone lined up on Sophie's side, though, and it's worth being honest about that. Some current WNBA players and a handful of coaches pushed back hard, arguing that her comments, regardless of intent, contributed to a hostile environment for teammates and opponents who fall outside the binary she was describing. A few sports commentators on other networks accused Barkley of wading into an issue he didn't fully understand, saying his comments oversimplified a much more layered conversation about inclusion in athletics. That pushback matters just as much as the support, because it shows this isn't a case of one grumpy legend against an entire league. It's a genuine split, with real people on both sides who feel strongly about what fairness in sports should actually look like. Some players have said publicly that they respect Sophie as a competitor, but disagree with her framing, arguing that the conversation about inclusion deserves more nuance than a short soundbite from an interview can capture. Brittney Griner's own comments added another layer entirely, and hers landed somewhere in the middle rather than fully on one side or the other. Before a matchup against Sophie's team, Griner told reporters that dealing with the whole situation had become annoying as crap, not necessarily disagreeing with Sophie's right to have an opinion, but expressing frustration at how much noise had built up around a single interview answer.
Besides the point. Sophie Cunningham becoming the face of protecting women and protecting girls is the most hilarious thing I've ever seen in my life. For one, she's saying that it's not about trans athletes. It's about protecting young girls. It's not about excluding only trans athletes. But you were a ring girl for somebody that has alleged allegations against women. Not only that, but being exposed by an old teammate for voting for somebody that has alleged allegations against young women and young girls. Young girls, right? So all of a sudden, she's the face of protecting young girls and young women, but being a hypocrite. That's only one part of this conversation. The focus of shutting the doors on trans athletes being this big emphasis right now, while trans athletes are just minding their freaking business. I have not seen a trans woman.
Some took it as Griner subtly criticizing Sophie for creating the mess in the first place. Others read it as Griner venting about the media circus and the constant questions, not about Sophie personally at all. What actually happened next did a lot to clear up which read was closer to the truth.
And this is what I keep talking about when I say we live in a backwards society. Sophie Cunningham, a WNBA player, one of the most notable WNBA players in the league now, is trying to defend women's rights. And the same women she's trying to defend are attacking her. Because it doesn't matter what you're trying to do. It doesn't matter what you mean by it. All it looks like is you support Trump. And these women have Trump derangement syndrome. They don't understand that you're making women's sports safer and fair so that they don't have to get in a ring and box a man. So they don't have to spend their entire life training to be beaten by a man who wasn't good enough to play in the NBA. So she's doing what she can to protect the sanctity of the sports that she loves. And you guys are attacking her for it. That is the craziest, most backward shit I have ever seen or heard, bro. I've never heard anything like this. So you don't want fair sports for women?
Before that same game tipped off, Griner and Sophie shared a lighthearted moment on the court, mimicking a viral finger-point gesture that had been floating around social media, clearly showing there wasn't any real animosity between the two of them personally. That clip did more to calm things down than any official league statement. Mostly because it showed two players who disagreed publicly still able to share a normal, even friendly moment before competing against each other, like professionals. That's really the tension sitting underneath this entire story. The players closest to the situation, Sophie and Griner included, have handled it with far more grace than a lot of the people reacting from the outside. Sophie has said repeatedly that she believes there's room for everyone, biological women, trans men, to be treated with respect even while she holds her position on competitive categories. She's never mocked anyone publicly, never escalated a confrontation, and even offered to send gifts to the two teenage girls who got humiliated by Keaton, turning an ugly incident into something personal on her end.
For anyone who attends a Storm game. Cunningham also weighed in after this alleged confrontation at the game. She posted on social media, "I truly believe there is a safe space and love for everybody, biological girls, biological boys, trans women, and trans men. Everyone is welcome at my table. You can disagree and still be kind." She said, "Bravo to those girls for standing up for what they believe. You'll be hearing from me soon." And she added, "Truly embarrassing of the co-owner. Unfortunately shows the type of leader she is."
Her response after the co-owner incident became almost as talked about as the original interview. She wrote that people can disagree and still be kind to each other, praised the two girls for standing up for what they believe, and called out Keaton's behavior directly without ever demanding she lose her job or attacking her personally. That tone has stayed consistent through every stage of the saga, even as the noise around her kept growing louder. Compare that to how some of the crowd reaction has looked at road games, and the contrast becomes obvious. Banners aimed at shaming her, organized boos every time she touches the ball, and a co-owner who thought it was acceptable to confront teenagers over a thank you sign. Whatever side of this debate someone lands on, it's hard to argue that Sophie has been the one escalating things.
Want to come in? She's covering your sign.
Outside arenas, that split has become visible in a different way entirely. Fans holding Save Women's Sports signs have started showing up at road games in growing numbers, standing across from counter-protesters holding their own signs criticizing Sophie's stance. Security has had to separate groups more than once, and local news stations have started covering the crowds outside the arena almost as much as the game happening inside it. That's the environment Barkley chose to step into when he finally broke his silence. He didn't have to say anything at all. Plenty of commentators avoid these topics entirely because there's no upside to wading into something this charged. But Barkley has never really operated that way, and once he spoke, it opened the door for a wave of other voices. Some agreeing, some pushing back hard to say what they'd been thinking for weeks. Urlacher's comments kept circulating for days after Barkley's segment aired. Mostly because football fans who don't normally follow WNBA storylines suddenly found themselves paying attention to this one. Perkins continued defending his position on multiple shows, always coming back to the same core point that Sophie answered a question honestly and has behaved with more composure than most of the people criticizing her.
So let's get something straight. Sophie Cunningham can make publicly transphobic comments, triple down on them, and continue to play without facing any real consequences, averaging 9 points per game, by the way. And yet, the second that someone else pushes back on them, they get hit with a suspension and a fine. Like, am I reading this correctly? Cunningham's recent harmful comments about trans women and women's sports sparked an anti-trans rally outside of Tuesday's game between the Storm and the Fever. In fact, a second Sophie Cunningham rally, which is what they're calling it, by the way, is also being planned for Friday's game in Portland against the Fire.
The entire league needed to focus on basketball instead of turning every press conference into a referendum on players' personal opinions. Plenty of athletes have said things over the years that generated far less organized backlash. And why is this particular topic drawing so much more intensity than usual sports controversies? None of this looks like it's cooling off anytime soon. Every time Sophie plays on the road, cameras are waiting to see whether the boos continue, whether new banners show up, and whether the league office finally addresses the pattern directly instead of issuing vague statements after the fact. Every time, another respected voice from a different corner of the sports world weighs in, whether in support or in criticism. The story picks up new life on a fresh platform.
I could not respect Sophie Cunningham more because she's putting her career on the line, speaking her truth, trying to protect our women and girls, and making sure that they have the ability to compete and all of their hard work to pay off because they're competing on an even playing field. That is the number one issue to me, and I want to see more women go ahead and speak out about this because put all the other issues aside. This is sport. And in sport, it must be a fair and even playing field. And having biological men competing with women is robbing them of their opportunities. Number one, that is simple. If this is a sport, it should be about equality and fairness on the playing field. And this is not fair. All the other issues, protecting our women in the locker rooms, all of that, I agree with. But when it comes to sport, this should be the #1 frontier issue, and it is not talked about enough, and we need more women to talk about it because it's stealing the opportunities of our hardworking women and girls.
What's clear through all of it is that Sophie Cunningham never asked to become the center of a national conversation about fairness in women's sports. She answered a question honestly, stood by her answer when the backlash came, and kept her tone steady even while things around her kept escalating. Charles Barkley breaking his silence didn't create this controversy, but it confirms something a lot of people had already suspected, that her opinion is shared by far more people across the sports world than the loudest reactions online would ever suggest.